Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Vibrant Scottish Mosques' third webinar. And tonight the spotlight is on mosques, community and activism. The aim of Vibrant Scottish Mosques is to work with our community to encourage excellence in the way our mosques cater for women in terms of facilities, services and spaces, and to really encourage our mosques to have better representation of women, better leadership roles and management in the mosques and in our communities. Indeed, Allah has prescribed excellence in all things. Sahih Muslim. As Muslims, we should be striving to be the best we can in our worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can do that by serving God. We can serve God better by serving His people, our people. And we can learn a lot from watching individuals and organisations that are striving in this way. So tonight we've invited some guests that have inspired us in the way they strive to serve their community. And we're hoping that they can really inspire others and yourself to replicate some of that great work that they're doing in their communities, in their mosques. And it's important that we raise the profile of this good practice. By raising the profile of this great practice, it makes it easier to replicate that. We're also mindful that this past week, which started off with the celebration of International Women's Day, ended with really difficult and uncomfortable discussions around the lack of safety for women, women's mental health issues, women's voices not being taken seriously unless collaborated and supported by a male voice, double, even triple penalty for women of colour facing racism. And it made us think, are we as a Muslim community doing enough to protect, support, elevate and recognise the talents of our women in our community so we can again become the beacons of our society? Activism is about bringing change for the betterment of our society. So let's introduce our guests tonight so we can get this discussion going. We have with us Sheikha Khatija Afandi, who is a teacher and project manager at Zial Quran Mosque in Glasgow. We have Dr. Kishore Sultana, who is a GP and director of Andalus in Glasgow. And we have Imam Mansoor Mahmood, who is Imam and the resident scholar at Kirkcaldy Central Mosque in Kirkcaldy, Fife. Thank you all for being here, giving your time, be with us, and inshallah, I really hope this is a beneficial discussion for our community. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. So I want to get right into this discussion, and can we start with you, Sheikh Khatija, talking about Zial Quran? Now, Zial Quran is a really great example of a small community mosque that has really become part of that community. Can you tell us a little bit about its journey and its vision and how it's come about?
So, wa alaikum assalam, and thank you for inviting me here. So, in terms of how Zial Quran came about, so Zial Quran was established by Imam Rabbani Senior, who most people know in Glasgow. So he came here, he came to Glasgow in the 80s, and before Zial Quran was established, as well as working on his family business, he was also teaching Quran in his home, alongside his wife Hassan Rabbani. So they were actively teaching the children Quran, as well as doing this. Imam Rabbani Senior, he was also leading prayers in his home, leading Taraweeh, and eventually, he realized the need for the community to have a mosque that's more holistic in its approach. So instead of going with the traditional route of gathering a committee and establishing that mosque, with help with friends and family, and from some of the imamat from down south, they managed to get the money together to establish Zial Quran. So Zial Quran was established in 1996 and has been a vital part of the community ever since then.
You know what strikes me about that story is that it started off with a family, with a couple. And that takes me very smoothly to Dr. Kishore Sultana, because Andalus is another great example of a really vibrant centre of the community. It's a centre that's been really like a grassroots mosque responding to its community's need. And it's come really from this vision that you and your husband Javed had. So tell us about your vision and how Andalus came about.
So if you look back a few decades, there were groups of people, not me, who had imagined and had a forward vision to know that we actually need in our communities beacon institutes and community hubs or community centres. If you imagine a mosque space is a prayer space with men, with a wudu facility, that's an essential facility for the men for their worship in ibadat. But then you want a space for women, for children, for maybe some social activities, for maybe some recreational activities. And this is where there was a need to create these spaces to facilitate other things that our community needs. So there was a certain vision that's very important to this. There was an intention clearly to serve and benefit the community, and a lot of hard work to overcome all the challenges and where are the resources going to come for this. So there's a big story, but I'm trying to keep it short just for now, and we can expand perhaps on bits you want to later on. And the idea, in fact, it's interesting actually, a lot of work we did was in our tenement flat in one of those alcoves, those cupboards, and running computers out, the first website we had up in 2000. And we knew there was a need for this right from the beginning. And where in the West End were we going to get a building to fit all of that? Where were we going to get, as I say, the resources? But subhanallah, it's really a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala how this went and how the story evolved, that we managed to achieve those things. Lots of hard work in the community and working to get the building and keeping on going with the involvement of actually ultimately a whole team of people, and with a team of people that I remember at one time was more than, and still is, I hasten to add, although lots of people are doing other things as well. I once looked at the management committee and the executive committee, and there was over 80% women. And that wasn't, they were put there, they were there because they organically were part of the kind of the community and, you know, people around that got involved. But so alhamdulillah, just for your viewers to be aware of what Andalus is now, pre-COVID, of course, we're not using the building at the moment. We have got 20,000 square feet, if I remember correctly, on 2 floors with a central masjid space at the top with 12 classrooms around it. I really wanted those. That's another story. With a meditation room, women's area that's there, but people can have as much privacy as they want, or just be involved as much as they want. And then on the ground floor, a cafe with a lecture theatre for education facilities and 2 functional rooms and a huge recreational hall for physical activities and also for community activities with showers as well. So, and we have beehives on the roof. And one day, hopefully, we'll have a garden roof up there as well. We have had a garden at the side with our eco projects. So it's just been huge. And if you go actually to the website, there's a couple of videos and there's masses of pictures from over the 10, 12 years work for people to kind of look at and enjoy, actually, because I certainly enjoy looking at them back. So that's a kind of a little bit of a snapshot, and, you know, wherever, inshallah, we can discuss further in due course.
Yeah, I wanted to definitely come back to this idea of you filling a need in the community as opposed to just thinking, let's get that prayer space up and running, and it becomes just that. It is, you know, Andalus, I think, is a different model. But Kirkcaldy Mosque is more of a traditional mosque in the sense that in terms of its structure, committee, executive committee. So Imam Mansour, can you tell us a little bit about Kirkcaldy Mosque, its structure and how it's come about, and also where are you now and what is your vision for the mosque?
So with Kirkcaldy Central Mosque, they started it in the late 80s in Fife, and it started off as a prayer hall in somebody's home. So in their back garden, they had a shed, and they would use it for Jummah prayers and Tarawih prayers in Ramadan. And that carried on for a year or two. And a few of the elders then decided to buy a plot of land, is 3 acres that we have at the moment. And there was a ready-built shed. I think it was used for scout meetings before it was used as a masjid. That was bought and the main facilities were Juma accommodation, 5 daily prayers and children's classes that would take place every single day. That carried on for the next 20 years, and they're still there in the same grounds, but then they decided to build a brand new masjid, which was needed. The old building wasn't going to be suitable and wasn't enough to include all the activities that they were planning to do. The previous imams that have come, you would say that they're traditional, so they were trained and brought up in Pakistan. They did their religious training there, and they were sufficient for the elders at that time to lead them in prayer, to do the Jummah talks in Urdu, and then to teach the children as well. As the children got older, the community and the committee in particular, they felt that an imam that is brought up in the UK, who can speak fluent English and is familiar with the context of this country and the area, is much more suitable for the children, especially as they get into the teens. So this was 5 years ago when I was asked through a relative who does some business here with one of the members of the committee, who said that, do you know anybody from Glasgow or surrounding areas that can come and work as an imam? And that's when I was approached, and I came and started doing work here. My first intention was, the masjid was already set in terms of prayers going on, classes being conducted, but what was missing was the community work. So to get in contact with non-religious groups such as the council, such as the local schools, local scout groups, elderly groups, and all the other community groups that were available. So as soon as I came in, I established those links with the help of my colleague who's no longer with us, Imam Hamad, who stayed with me for 2 years and then moved back. So we set up things like open days. We had the NHS come and visit. We went to visit schools, to do assemblies, to attend religious education classes, inviting scout groups to come in to earn their faith badge. And in doing that, we then became much more open to the community and much more known by the non-Muslim community.
Primary need, and then expanded into education, and then you're saying when you started with the mosque, you brought in that outreach kind of program, engaging with the community at large. I think that's really important because you need to, you're obviously responding to the needs of your growing community and the diversity that has. And I want viewers and people listening to this to kind of really pay attention to the difference of the 3 mosques that we've brought on today. And we did that on purpose because they're all serving, you're all serving your community in different ways, in innovative ways, but responding to the needs of those particular communities in different ways. And it's just to highlight that we can do things differently, but be as effective and be as beneficial. We don't have, there's no one standard answer that fits all communities, and it's just to keep that open mind. One of the things you've all talked about is education. And I want to bring Sheikha Khadija in here because Zial Quran has a really great youth and children's education program, which I think is a highlight for what you do, because the area where Zial Quran is, it's a very young community, lots of youth, lots of kids, lots of issues around children and youth. So obviously the educational program has to be geared to that. Tell us about the educational program that you have, and why is it different, and why is it suited to that community?
So one of the things is about the education program in Zial Quran is we wanted to go for like an all-round holistic education. So obviously we have the I syllabus for schools, which is a great syllabus. It's, but we wanted to add to that as well. So not only is it about just the education, but also the student experience and what actually the students need. So in terms of having the I syllabus for schools, we also have for instance, we have a student counsellor, a qualified CBT therapist and counsellor who is available for the kids if they need to talk. Because one of the things that's coming up now is issues with, you know, teenage and young children with their mental health. It's something that's becoming extremely common. So this is something that we have in place. But also as well, we do things like we add educational things such as, like, you know, memorizing Quran and different things. But what we also have done as well is we try to give the children the experience. So even if this child hasn't, you know, really excelled educationally wise within its Islamic study in their Islamic studies, they have that experience, they have that support there. So we offer things like, you know, we do workshops in terms of mental health. So there's mental health and, you know, just health in general, puberty, what does that mean for them, career days, you know, CV writing and different things that the kids actually need, the kids and the teenagers. And we try our best to cater for that from really small ages all the way up to university ages. Like, how does one go about applying for university and such? And we offer, like, you know, we like to take the kids on trips and stuff just so they can bond with each other, and also so they can have a relationship with us as their teacher. What's really important for us is to give the kids a safe space. And this is something that's very important for us, and it's very important for the kids as well, that they feel that they have a place that they can come. Because, you know, a lot of kids have came to me and they've said, well, we feel like Zia Quran is different because there's a space for us. We have a place here. Whereas maybe in some other places they feel slightly ostracized, or they feel like, you know, they've been left out. So, you know, we want to, as much as possible, to give them a whole syllabus. It's not just education, but looking after them physically, looking after them mentally, emotionally and spiritually is something that's really important for us at Zia Quran.
I think that's amazing. I think the work you're doing there to establish what you have established is been amazing for the community, and I'm sure lots of children and their parents benefit from that. May they continue to do so. Dr. Kish, can I come to you? And you mentioned earlier about the makeup of your sort of committee and executive committee of Andalus. I want to talk a little bit more. I want to hear from you about that. Because I know there's a lot of, mashallah, 80% women, diversity in that group. How did that come about? Was that purposeful? Did you kind of go out to find that diversity? What's the strength of that diversity, and how did it happen?
Can I just follow on from Khadija just for a second with the youth, just on a point, and then come back to that if you don't mind. You know, that's very interesting and very lovely to hear a lot of that work, and it kind of parallels a little bit with some of what we did very early on. We got almost a decade ago, and one of the milestones of some of the work we did with the children and connecting then with the parents in the community was the young people's project, the Rihla project, where we actually were able to do exactly what you're saying, connect with the children, do outdoor, indoor activities. They did all sorts of interesting things like hill walking, horse riding, whitewater rafting, all these things and other things that I know nothing about. They'd go up, and the girls and boys would go out, and the parents would be coming along sometimes as well as volunteers. And it's interesting that is actually, and then bringing that within, you know, allowing that to be part of not just coming and learning Quran or having Islamic studies, but matching that up with the recreational and social aspects. And that leads me on to then you engage with the community, you get to know people, you get to know who's around. Oh, are you interested in doing this? Would you like to get involved in this? We're doing this, you're welcome, you'll come along to the Eid gathering, contribute this. And it organically follows, or the mother and toddlers, or this group. And a lot of the people that I think subsequently got involved in the committees and the management were actually organically from these groups of people and actually part of the community. And in fact, brings me to an important point about all of this work. Actually, you may think it's somebody somewhere else doing this. Actually, it's not somebody somewhere else doing this. It's actually for us as the community, and we as the community have to do it. And this is where I would urge everybody, anybody, anywhere, whatever ideas you have or reflections that you have, that what you want to contribute and you want to do, you know, have that first and foremost, to be honest, actually is making that intention that you intend to do something, and then having ideas. And then it's unbelievable how you'll find that that will kind of follow through with the barakah of Allah. So organically, to answer your question, it was from those groups of our connections with the community that led to the involvement of those people by themselves. It was mums, it was, you know, just people who came along. It wasn't handheld and chosen. Of course, you looked, if somebody had a particular skill, you know, in whatever it was, you know, whether it was accountancy or in building or in the building trade or whatever, of course, you're going to approach them for those particular skills. But in general, you know, it was organically evolving, and that was actually one of the beauties of how it kind of, it was amazing actually. We didn't really plan it, to be honest. It happened naturally.
I love that you said that and you brought that up, and that need for every one of us to become active in our mosques and in our communities, because these mosques and these community centres are ours. You know, it's our responsibility to serve and to be part of that, you know, part of that community. So thank you, Dr. Kish, for bringing that up. And, you know, I hope people that are listening are inspired by this. And if you have a local mosque and you want to see something there, then be that change, you know, engage with your mosque and try and have that conversation and bring that innovative idea there. So really love this organic way that your mosque has grown, that Andalus has grown. And I know obviously a lot of places aren't like that. So Kirkcaldy Mosque is, again, you know, more of a traditional structure. But I know that there's a lot of females involved in making Kirkcaldy Mosque what it is. Tell us the importance of having that Imam Mansour, having female scholars, female volunteers. And if that wasn't, so how did that come about? Was that organic, or did you look for specific people to come on board, and why was that?
So when I started my job 5 years ago, I was there for a couple of months before my colleague Imam Hamad came. We've both studied the same institution in Nottingham, and then we both studied together, and that's where I met him when I was in Cairo, Al-Azhar University. And funnily enough, we're both married to graduates of school at the madrasa in Nottingham, and our wives are relatives as well. So they're both trained in the Islamic sciences. So when we came and started our job, the committee were interested in us because our wives were also trained in the Islamic sciences, and they needed somebody. They needed women to teach the female community here. That didn't mean that women weren't involved in the masjid. When I came, I was told that any event that took place except Jummah, the women were always welcome, and they said that they would be for Jummah. It was just that the building was too small, and we needed the other hall for the men to fit them in for Jummah. So it was the wives of the trustees and the men in management who would take care of the ladies' side. So when my wife and Imam Hamad's wife came, they then made it more structured, where they had classes, they had regular events every week, so that there was a female presence there. So it's extremely important that there is a woman in a leadership role who is trained in the Islamic sciences, just to show that firstly to show that there's a female presence within the masjid, and also if the women have any issues that they want to bring up that they may feel uncomfortable to approach the imam with, they can then go to these female scholars and learn from them. And because our community is predominantly Pakistani and of an Indian background, the culture is quite traditional. So some of the elder women probably would not feel comfortable in approaching the imam. Generally is actually okay here. Since I've been here, I've had men and women but who have called me up to discuss Masail and ask for advice. But surely there will be many women who feel uncomfortable about that, and they tend to contact my wife, or when Imam Hamad's wife was here, they would contact her. And when it comes to classes, they're much more comfortable with a female teaching them rather than a male. They feel much more relaxed. That's the feedback that I've had from the two female scholars that we've had in the masjid. So again, extremely important to cater for the women, that there is a female scholar there.
So now that your mosque has an active female scholar in a leadership role, has that influenced the congregation? Does that make the congregation more diverse? Are women feeling more welcome to come to the mosque? What's changed because of that?
I think the educational side has changed. I think they've always felt welcome because that hall's always been there. We're a very small community, so at namaz time, we would never have the main hall filled for namaz. It's only at Jummah. So they've always felt welcome, but I think they were lacking in education because they didn't have a female scholar there to teach them. So they certainly feel much more welcome in that regard. And also, I think because previous imams were also from Pakistan, so there was that idea of strict segregation between men and women, so they didn't feel comfortable in approaching the imams. But certainly they do come much more. A prime example actually is of last Ramadan, when a few women asked my wife if she was coming to do the Taraweeh prayers. And normally what happens is in Ramadan, because women are quite busy in their homes with their families, they wouldn't come to Taraweeh prayer. And the elder generation are still within those traditional roles within their homes, so they tend to stay there. So that hall would be used for, the men would sit there and have their tea after their iftari. But last year, there was quite a few requests where they asked my wife if she was going to come to do Taraweeh, and she said she would, and that encouraged them to come also. So that tea time had to be cut out then to make an announcement for that. And that hall was strictly there for women, who then also came for their iftari, stayed there for Taraweeh. So yeah, it's been a very, very positive a change that's taken place with the female scholars that came.
I'm just reading a message that someone's put up on our Facebook page saying that they felt some barriers going to their local mosque for prayers, and it wasn't from the actual centre itself, but from ladies that were coordinating the ladies section. And I know sometimes there can be a kind of a hierarchy, and maybe again the older generation, the same kind of mindset can be perpetrated and transmitted. However, I know Zial Quran isn't like that, in the sense that having the women there is changed the shape of the congregation for the mosque. And Khadija, since you've been with Zial Quran, tell us about some of the changes that you've seen, because you're very visibly one of the key players in Zial Quran. And I think that visibility makes a huge difference in the people that come through the door and how they feel about that place.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things I really appreciate in the Zial Quran, and not even just like today in today's age, like if you go way back to the start of Zial Quran and how Zial Quran came around, like Imam Rabbani Senior's wife, Hassan Rabbani, she was very instrumental in setting up that mosque as well. She was very active within that mosque, within the education as well. And women play a major part in Zial Quran. There's trustees, female trustees who are involved. There's female management that's involved. Myself, as well as teaching, I'm a project manager for the education. For the education, I'm a project manager, but also as well for like the outreach program that we have, the COVID response program that we have in Zial Quran. It's actually a female who's the project manager for that as well. And females in general in Zial Quran, we have full use of the space. There's not a space that we are like restricted from. So if there's like an event at the mosque, and even though we're a small mosque, if there's an event at that mosque, You know, if we have more women than we have men, like we will have the main hall, we will have use of the main hall, and the men will either have to pray upstairs or in the smaller room. So there is a priority there for us. There is space there for us, and it's brought along, even since I've been here, it's brought along, I've seen many women come to me, many women phone me. I have appointments with women regularly, like in the office, like, you know, so it's a safe space, not only just for our kids, but a safe space for females in general. And that's really something that's been important to the Al Quran, as well as producing female scholars and taking on board female scholars as well. So this is something that's important to us, to be visible, to have female leadership that is visible and not just like on the back burner or not just like forgot about. We are very much part of that, the fabric of that madrasa. And that's one of the things I find incredible about that since I came back to the UK, how involved we are as females in this madrasa, and how involved in females we are in running the madrasa as well, and having a say in what goes on in that place. So alhamdulillah, like, you know, we're all rounders when it comes to female inclusion and female leadership within the mosque.
No, that's really inspiring, and I really do hope that other people can hear that and be inspired to replicate that kind of model. It still is sad though when you hear and you read about these experiences like this lady just shared with us, that it was other women that are working in the mosque are making her feel less welcome or inferior. Kish, how do you make sure that that doesn't happen, Andalus? Like, because it doesn't. I mean, I've been to Eid prayer and Jummah prayer, and it's like Eid's prayer especially, it's like a family party, mashallah. Like you feel like you're part of Andalus. How do you make sure that happens? Where does that come from?
I think it's not engineered. It's an organic, I guess, expression of how we welcome everybody and anybody, and there's not any restrictions. And I don't know if, I mean, we haven't kind of focused on gender, to be fair. I mean, although I know that if I may say so, I think women have been vital to the making of that mosque and the running of that mosque, and men have been vital to the running and making of that mosque also. And we've worked very much in partnership, not only Javid, my husband, with myself, but a whole team of people, actually, men and women, have been involved in establishing that. And we've never, interestingly, focused on gender. We've just got on with the work. And we're discussing it now because we're reflecting on it because, you know, of the female role. I understand that. But we've never actually, over the years, focused on that. Whoever can do the work does the work. I guess I come from a particular ethnic background and experience these type of, you know, like the sister's saying, experiences where you go in a mosque and you're not quite welcome. And I remember being in Qatar actually and going up to the women's area, funnily enough, like you have in Central Mosque, upstairs, going through the door, and I couldn't go through. Because there was a brother on the other side and he couldn't go past, and he couldn't let me go past because he couldn't see a female. And you know, it was really ridiculous. We were stuck. And these are cultural things. We didn't have that cultural baggage. We didn't have any of that. So everything flows naturally and everybody's welcome everywhere they want to be. You know, they're comfortable to be. So, for example, if women want to have a really private space at the back because they feel they want that, you know what? They're welcome. And if women want to be right involved with the lectures going on right at the front as well, when the lectures and things, then they're welcome. It's completely their choice. And when you give people their choice, then they feel welcome.
Interesting you bring up culture in this, because I've grown up in the West End of Glasgow, and I know that the majority are, again, South Asian background, but you've purposefully, and I know you'll say organically, but somehow you managed to make Andalus not defined by South Asian culture.
Definitely
it's
not.
A Muslim, it's a centre for Muslims of all backgrounds.
That's very, very interesting point, actually. And coming back to your point about Eid and the colourful, and I mean, you will see all races and ethnic groups when you come, and lots of colourful, clothing from all parts of the world on Eid, actually. And this is what a lot of people will feed back to me, that there is a whole mixed bunch of people from lots of backgrounds. Because we do see, the Bangladeshi mosque and the Pakistani mosque and the Arab mosque. We do have these, and I guess these things have happened because those communities have come together to establish those mosques. So there's reasons for that, I'm sure, but because we were not defined by a particular ethnic group or our social, the groups that have got involved in the work were not defined by and everybody was welcome. Meant that everybody is involved and everybody mixes in, and it's, you see the Tajweed classes and the Quran classes and the Islamic studies classes we do. There's a whole mixed bunch of children that are able to socialize, which is very interesting.
Okay, a question that's just come in. Sorry, Khadija, did you want to say something? Mm-hmm. A question that's just come in is someone's asking, is there a formal feedback process for your congregation to let you know how they feel about your institution, and have any changes come from that so people want to make a change? So Imam Mansour, can I ask you that question first? And maybe that it isn't, because it's not something that is traditionally done in mosques, but is there a process that you have in place that does that?
We don't have anything formal, like a form that you fill in and hand in, but I'm quite well connected with the entire community. We're a very small town. Most of the people are actually from the same area in Pakistan, and so everybody knows everybody, and I've got everybody's number. We're all on a WhatsApp group, so people contact me directly if there are any issues, and things like that have happened in the past, where it's through a phone call or a message, and then a discussion is carried out like that, but nothing where the suggestion box or anything like that in the masjid. But now that you say that, maybe that'll be a good idea for the new building that we're setting up, to have something like that there. I think that'll be really, really good.
I think it's a great way of engaging people that may not want to come up to you face to face, and maybe there's a complaint, maybe it's a negative thing, so it makes it easier for that process to happen. And I wonder if, I know Kirkcaldy is not as urban as Glasgow is and doesn't have the same diversity of Muslims like Glasgow has, but have you noticed any changes in the community, and do you think that Kirkcaldy Mosque is equipped to change with the change that the community might be going through?
But I think, and if so.
Not, could it be?
I think so. We've had changes in our management in the past few years. So it was the elders who had set up the masjid, and then a few years ago it was decided that you should get youngsters in, who are born here and raised here, who can then take the mosque forward, and that's what's happened. I mean, we've got a line manager now for the imams, who's born and brought up in Glasgow, and then moved to Kirkcaldy. So we liaise with him with any events or anything that we need to do, and our team is a mix up of imams that are trained in the UK with imams that are trained in Pakistan as well. I think it's very important to have both, because when I came in first, I wasn't able to accommodate for the elder community, who were feeling frustrated because there's a certain way and a methodology that the imams that are trained in Pakistan use, and I tried to impose my fresh methodology on them, and they weren't having that. So it was simple things like the speech on Friday should be done in Urdu, the certain knots, the way that they're supposed to be read in programs. The state secretary, if he speaks in Urdu, there's a certain way that he does it. It's more of a romanticized type of methodology that they use in Urdu when they stand on stage, and I wasn't delivering that. So we've got both now. and so we're able to cater for that Urdu community and the English, and we're open to people from various groups coming. I mean, we've got there's many of our doctors that work in the NHS that are of Arab, Turkish and African background who tend to come and do Juma. We've got 2 mosques in Kirkcaldy. They tend to come to our masjid because the Juma speech is now always in English with the PowerPoint presentation, and they prefer that over the other masjid, which is only done in Urdu, and they can't understand that. So I think in the past few years, we've got ourselves prepared for. I think the reason they did that was because that new masjid was getting made is considered as a central mosque, much more open for everybody, not considered as a South Asian mosque anymore, but just a masjid for any Muslim to come in, and they've prepared a team that's ready to then take the work forward, inshallah, when that mosque opens, hopefully this year.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so going forward, a question for everybody, and it's a challenge that we're all facing now that we're coming out of lockdown, inshallah. How will your mosques recover from the pandemic, recover from COVID, and what are your plans going forward, and how can the community support you in this? So can I start with Sheikha Khadija first?
So going forward, really, like in Zia Quran, we are really taking it day by day, and we can only take it one step at a time, and seeing really where the lay of the land is. We have some preparations and how we want to go forward, some programs that we want to launch going forward, but in terms of like community input, I mean, one of the most important things that the community can do is really get behind your masjids and really get behind your imams, get behind the teachers at your madrasas, and just support them, whether that be in terms of ideas going forward, whether that be in terms of sadaqah, whether that be in terms of really letting us know what you need from us going forward. This is like a perfect way of how going forward we can manage our expectations and know what we need to cater for, because with the coming of COVID has really, like, and the way I see it, it's really wiped a slate clean. So we have a chance for a fresh start, and this is a chance for a fresh start for all our masjids, our madrasas, our Islamic centres. There's a real chance for change there. So going forward, especially in Zia, we've got some things in the pipeline, but really we're just taking it day by day and just seeing where the lay of the land is.
I hope that other mosques and centres like yourself are welcoming and asking for that interaction with their communities, because sometimes the hurdles, sometimes there are hurdles in getting that message and that communication and together.
Like
that message.
Yeah, of course. Like at Zia Quran, we want to have, active engagement with our community. It's important for us, because what is the point of us being there if we're not serving the people who need it the most? So what we want to have, like, somewhat informal sort of feedback, in terms of what do you need. Okay, we want to know from our community, what do you need? And one of the ways that we've done that is to have it quite informal, we like to have quite a relaxed atmosphere where people feel that they can approach us, which is very important. We focus on our approachability. How can people approach us? And it's became quite a natural process. So even in times where if I'm not at the masjid, or if I'm just somewhere else, or I'm somewhere else pertaining to duties that I have, people will come to me knowing that I am at Zia Quran, and they will tell me, like, they feel comfortable enough to tell me, whether it's brothers, whether it's sisters, they feel comfortable enough to tell me. And that's something that's really important for our mosques, that there is that approachability, and that's something that we really take seriously for us at Zia Quran, that we can be approached and you can tell us what we need, and tell us what we can provide for you to make your transition, whether that be in terms of religiosity, whether that be in terms of mental health, etc. That is something that we kind of pride ourselves on.
Yeah, and I think it should be. I think for scholars like yourself, Sheikh Khadija, and Imam Mansour, as scholars, I found you to be very approachable, and that is so refreshing to see. And I really do hope that other scholars and imams and community leaders are, can be like that. Kish, can I come to you and ask you the same question in terms of COVID plans going forward? What's Andalus planning on doing, and how can the community help you?
Andalus is one thing, but I think I guess it's a general question. I mean, a lot of masjids might depend on revenue, on regular activities, and if imam's not employed, they may not have any, the income issues and are issues for masjids all over the country. And it's something I think if we're now talking to everybody, is that I think we all need to get together and think about whatever is local to us that we benefit from, and what way can I contribute and help with this. And I think that this is where I would definitely second what Khadija has said, is that the thing is that people that run these places are not running, they're running them to serve and benefit people. And if you want something to happen, you do have to be present and be around and be talking and engaging and seeing what's going on and what's feasible and what you'd like to happen. Like I will say to somebody, they'll say, I want this to happen. I'll say, well, okay, get a group of you and I'll facilitate. The space is there. The resource, there's certain things that are there that make it easy to happen. But there's manpower, capacity, resources that actually have to come from the community as well. So I would definitely second that, and to keep in mind your masjid as going forward. That's a general point. In terms of Andalus, I think one of the things that we try to do, of course, all masjids depend on the community for their sustainability. We tried as much as possible to try and take revenues from the classes, etc. as well, although you don't want to charge too much because it's not feasible for people as well. We've been lucky that we have had revenue streams, business opportunities within the building, as in hiring office space, and we've had actually through COVID, we've had people hire the building for other purposes apart from the purposes we had. So in that sense, we've had business opportunities within the spaces we've got to help us out in this period. Of course, we still need resources to pay for the building. So I'm not so, to be fair, worried about that personally. I would actually reach out and say to people, look, the building is there, is in the heart of the West End, right? And exactly as you say, Khadija, these things have happened before. Let's think about the future. What do we want to happen in there in the future? What do you want to happen in there in the future? And what bit can you play in that? And it's really important to have that conversation. And in terms of just feedback, what we've done over the years, actually just generally, is always, on several big occasions, particularly, we've had needs assessments and asked people what they'd like to happen and what they're interested in, and then use that to formulate going forward. Had feedback after classes. We had a box at one time, but I think it's disappeared once it got emptied. That's another idea, to put anonymous feedback, but certainly after classes, and certainly on our website and Facebook page, we get lots of messages. And if people really have a gripe, honestly, I have heard lots over the years, and I welcome you to that. And then if there's changes we can make on that front, we're very, very welcome to, if there's feasible changes we can make, of course we would make them, but let it be constructive criticism.
Great, some really, really good points. Thank you, Kish, for that. I want to come back on something you've mentioned, a question that's popped up about everyone, like mosques coming together, and maybe there's a wee message that you can give out to mosques and committee members around that. I think Imam Mansour, I think he's just left us. Okay, we'll wait till he comes back. I think he's dropped off. So while we're waiting for Imam Mansour to come back, how do you think that mosques can work together and collaborate? Because it's a really great opportunity just now. Both of you pointed out it's almost like a clean slate. There's some real challenges, financial challenges as well. Resources are challenging. This is a good time for collaboration of all mosques. What could come of that, and how could we do that? I can almost see the benefit, because this is a good opportunity for it. So Khadija, from yourself first, do you see this as a good opportunity for collaboration of all mosques to come together and work together on this, and how could that happen?
So, this is a great opportunity, because first of all, we need to first, like, re-establish our attentions. Like, what are we doing this for? We're doing this, like, you know, we're there for the sake of Allah. We're serving people for the sake of Allah. So, and realistically speaking, all masjids have the same purpose. Our same purpose is to take the people who attend our masjids, our communities, is to bring them closer to Allah. So this is the purpose of the masjid. The masjid is the house of Allah. So going forward, so rather than focusing on what our differences are and what, like, you know, who speaks Urdu, who doesn't speak Urdu, whereas we have to make our spaces, we have to be on the same page. We have to work together. So, like, if you know an imam who specializes in, you know, where it comes to marital matters or matters of fiqh or matters other kind of matters pertaining to the science, then you can say to a person, like, for instance, Imam Mansour deals with this, like, you know, if you speak to him, maybe he can help you. Or if you speak, there's a female scholar at XYZ Islamic Centre, maybe she can help you out in this situation. And this is the ways that we can communicate with each other to provide a better service for our communities, because our communities are given to us as an imana. So if you want to look at it on the spiritual and religious side, our communities are given to us as an imana from Allah. So in that imana, we have to do our best to pull together, to pull our resources together to serve those people. You know, so we have to put some of our differences aside, any differences that might be found there, and really be able to communicate with each other and work together for the greater good of our community, rather than being so polarized. And like, you know, you have one masjid here, one masjid there, an Islamic centre there. We are our ummah, and we have to be in this together. We have to be on the same page. Whether we do things differently or not, maybe we have different opinions, which is fine, which is absolutely fine. Everybody has a different approach, but we have to come together for the greater good. And so there has to be a level of communication between the masjids. So whether that's masjids in the wider Glasgow area or masjids, you know, nationally in Scotland, I think it's something important that the people who are using our resources know where they can find the resources that they need.
I think it's an important.
I think that's yeah. Go on, Kish.
I think that's a very important point. I don't think the masjids are necessarily polarized. You're probably right that there is probably a lack of communication because there isn't a forum for communication, and that could be an idea to take forward and a positive one. I think that also I agree completely. If there's services, I remember we had certain training programs in Andalus, and at that time I reached out to all the local masjids and individuals who I felt could benefit from that. And over the years, I've kind of done that because we've done some particular training over the years. And then whether it be in Arabic, whether it be in Tajweed, whether it be in Islamic studies, so that the other people can take from that and apply that in their own masjids if they want. Equally, if those services are not provided in that masjid, because you can't do everything, right? And it's happening somewhere else. That's, people signposting people is perfectly, I think being aware of and signposting people. I've known that to happen quite a bit, to be honest, if that's needed. Particularly, so for example, we don't have counselling services and certain other organizations have counselling services, or, then you have to direct people to where to go, if you see what I mean, if they're asking you. So inshallah, that can be a positive thing. But I think to develop our masjids from inside for the community, for that community, is really a real imperative.
So we're talking about how mosques can collaborate together to really better our society, because it's almost like the pandemic and the COVID situation has given us an opportunity to start from scratch, and this is an opportunity for collaboration. They say that you have strength in numbers. So the question we were asking is, how can mosques increase their collaboration and their coordination with other mosques, whether that's regionally or nationally, rather than working by themselves? And before I answer that, I saw that during COVID, I did see a forum of mosques together sharing practice, and obviously, when we had to shut down and they were talking about how they were going to shut down, or when prayer was allowed, how they were going to do that. And it was a really nice discussion to see. But I also wonder if we have more female voices on those forums, the impact that we could have, because traditionally speaking, when these this sort of forum has happened, it's been very male dominated.
Mhm.
And we know that organizations and companies where there's a more diverse group of people, there is a lot more benefit in that because of the different characteristics and personalities that can be brought into that forum. So just those are my thoughts. But Imam Mansour, let's hear from you, inshallah.
I think, firstly, imams, female teachers of various mosques should meet. There should be a forum with imams and scholars. I think they should try to first keep it local because nationally it might be a little bit difficult. So try something local and regional to see how you get along. Simple things like when you do community projects, for example, like what we did for the pandemic with the first lockdown. Last year, we contacted members of the other masjid and said that we'll get our donations together, we'll buy supplies, have volunteers from both organizations, and we'll then deliver them to people that need them most. And that worked really, really well. Inviting imams and teachers to and members of the management to each other's programs, trying to put so sometimes you get the divide because of theological backgrounds, whereas some people might not go to the other masjid because the imam is of a certain theology and they wouldn't want to pray namaz behind that person. I've always preached when I've came here is that, whichever masjid that you go to, pray your namaz there and it's completely fine from you. So once you get that, try to get that theological dispute out the way, we can then move forward for collaboration. I remember, I think maybe this was 15 years ago when Sheikh Hamza Yusuf came to the UK, who and tried to get mosques to come together from different theological backgrounds, but it was very difficult for him. And now 15, 20 years on, we're starting to get slightly better, especially with the younger generation born in the UK find this insignificant. Reason is because the theological disputes have come from South Asia. And the elders that have come for them, of course, they'll have that within inside them. But the community here, born and brought up here, don't have an issue with that. So I think that we are trying in many mosques to do that. But I think certainly within the next maybe 15 to 20 years, I think this issue of sticking to one mosque will completely finish, and mosques will be much more open just because of the congregation that is there. Then they'll be very open to praying in various mosques and doing work with multiple mosques. And as mentioned before, with the signposting, that's very, very important, that as imams and leaders of organizations, you must first accept that you're not an expert in everything. Your specialization might be in a certain area, and be open to sending people to other organizations. And treat masjids as the houses of Allah, not as a place where you're going to promote yourself, but you're using the masjids as a service to the community. If you're unable to provide that service, then you should direct the person to an organization or a person that can provide that service to them.
And with that in mind, keeping in mind that our mosques are the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're for the service of the community, and they're primarily run by volunteers, what advice would you give to mosque users where it's not feasible to maybe fulfill their expectations? Maybe not, maybe it's a time thing, and sometimes you hear things like the management isn't listening or they don't do what we want them to do. How would you advise people? Kish, can we start with you on that one?
I can think of an example. For example, when we first got our building, we actually didn't have a lift in it. And I remember on one occasion, one of the ladies had huge difficulties getting up the stairs. Okay. Now, our intentions were definitely to put a lift in that building, but it doesn't happen the day you get the building. And it was a number of years, and through a whole process and through fundraising and getting resources, that actually, alhamdulillah, we do have a lift facility in there. So, you know, we knew that anyway at the outset, to be honest. And of course, we got feedback on that effect, and seeing with our own eyes the difficulties somebody was having with that as well. So I think feedback is important so that people can reflect on it, and then importantly, make the changes that are feasible. Because sometimes we have to be honest, not everything can be fixed in a day, you know. And and so I guess then it's about a conversation, you know, and not just I often and believe it or not, everything that comes in, we read it and we reflect on it, and what are the changes that are possible, and have a conversation with people. What barriers do you have, you know, each of you, to maybe facilitating this, and is there anything we can do as participants? So it's not about, this is not, I don't believe this is a hierarchy. This is a conversation between people, between me and you, and say, look, actually we could do this, but we can't, or we can't do this because of this restriction. So I think if it falls on deaf ears, I hope not. You know, there should be at least some kind of conversation so people have an understanding of what's happening at that particular moment in time.
So it requires that trust being built with your community again, or doesn't it? It's about that continual conversation, asking them for feedback, reflecting on feedback, and then obviously giving them feedback as well if you can't do something, and the reasons for that. So open channels of communication. Sheikha Khadija or Imam Mansour, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's just that's the way to do it. And if it does fall on deaf ears, I think the masjids are run by the communities financially. So it's the community that owns the masjid. So if there's an issue, say, with the women's activities are not taking place in a certain masjid, and the committee is not listening, the women should build up numbers and then voice that concern, which will have much more of an impact. So the management will feel that this is an issue within the community, and we need to make a change about it. If there's one or two people that do it, it may fall on deaf ears, and they'll feel that is insignificant. You know, sign a petition and send it. You know, get signatures from your local community, send it to the masjid, and so that they know that this is a concern. Many people feel the same way, and I'm quite sure that the management will be forced then to make changes.
Okay. Khadija, can I come to you? I wanted to pick up on one of the things that you mentioned earlier about the mental health support that you do at Zia Al Quran. That's quite an innovative new idea, and very much needed in the area that you work, because it's quite an urban area, but especially now. And I wonder, how has the community responded to that? What kind of feedback are you getting from your congregation, and specifically around mental health? Why did you do something like that, and what feedback are you getting from the community?
So mental health is something that's very, very important to us. And one of the things that we were kind of striving to do at Zia Al Quran is to kind of try and break down that kind of barrier, or that kind of stigma that, you know, mental health is because, you know, you're having mental health issues because maybe you're not praying enough, or you're not doing this, or you're not doing that. So we wanted to kind of really tear down those kind of those ideas, or those kind of stereotypes within Muslim communities that, you know, this is the reason why you're struggling with your mental health. And then going forward, we were one of the first places to offer free CBT counselling, free CBT therapy with a qualified therapist and counsellor. And going forward and building on from that, we brought the same therapist, same counsellor in for our students, for our student body. And then going forward and building upon that again, we've actually got something in the pipeline that we've not released yet, where the community can have access to CBT therapy, counselling, or if it's not counselling that they require, you know, just community-based advice and something. So we've got this project in the pipeline for us at Zia Al Quran, and you know, these services have been popular. They've been increasingly popular. They're popular with our students, whether that's the younger kids, teenagers, adults, men and women are using these services. And the personal feedback that I've had that people have said to me, obviously maybe not talking about their specific issues, but talking about how it's became a lifeline for them and how they've had an outlet for somewhere. Because, sometimes in certain pockets of the community, mental health can be quite stigmatized, or people feel stigmatized or too shy to come forward at the fact that they are struggling with their own mental health. So this has been something that's quite crucial for us at Zia Quran, and one of our intentions, inshallah, is to become a centre for Islamic counselling. So also as well, the therapists and the counsellors that we have on board are actually Muslims themselves, Muslims from the wider community, the Southeast Asian community, but also serving all diversities, all races, everyone. We have this kind of policy that everyone's welcome, so they're welcome to use our services. Everyone has a place at Zia Quran, which is important for us. And and having these kind of services that is in tune with our traditional our traditions as Muslims, and what we face as Muslims is important. And it's been when we talk to, when we have some feedback, with the counsellors that we do have in Zia Quran, they're always busy. It's like they always have their appointment slots are always full. And even, which is important as well, there is encouragement amongst the teachers that we have at Zia Quran to eventually to at least think about maybe pursuing qualifications within counselling or Islamic counselling that will benefit in the work as well that we're doing with the kids, with the adults, in different aspects of community. So we're all really, coming together in this to support our community, especially within mental health, because especially in this time of COVID, because people's mental health is just, for some people, it's quite delicate. And they need to know that we are there. They need to know that, as a community, as a masjid, or as a place of worship, it's an all-round holistic, you will be supported, you do have a place, and you're not alone in this time.
See, that's interesting you say. It's interesting you say that you're planning to develop those specialize in those services with counselling, which leads me to think that if you're building capacity within that capacity then actually could rove around the city, and in fact intercity too. Actually in other and build surgeries in other places, so that it could actually be benefiting other communities as well.
Yeah,
just a thought.
It goes back to what we were saying before about different specialities within mosques and signposting to each other. So you look like you're becoming quite a beacon when it comes to mental health within the Muslim community, and maybe that becomes a speciality of the Al Quran going forward.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that we hope, but one thing I want to kind of add about Zia Quran as well, a lot of people who use our services are not just local to that particular surrounding area. We have people who come and use our services from as far away as Stevenson and Kilmarnock, and people actually come to us and travel long distances to come and use the services, either for their child being enrolled in madrasa, for for the therapy, so we have this where building on what you were saying and how we can expand to everybody and be intercity as well as local. So that, and that's also a great idea as well going forward. Hopefully, inshallah, we can achieve that.
It just comes from go ahead.
Well, a question I wanted to actually, because I'm kind of worried about time, but I wanted to really pick up on something Andalus do really well, and it's an area that we do not recognise or give enough time and effort to, and that's creativity. Like in Muslim arts, Islamic arts, and I think Andalus is very much at the forefront of that, with your cinema, your cafe, with the calligraphy work that you had done in the community centre. Tell me a little bit about the thinking behind that, because mashallah, I think it's such a refreshing project and much needed.
Okay, that bit I would have to pass over to Javed to be honest, sort of get him to talk about that. But I think the interesting thing is that there is lots of diversity of activity going on. And the interesting thing about those activities in the social area, in the cinema, is it actually invites diverse members of the community, Muslim, non-Muslim, everybody. Actually, and that's the interesting part of the creativity. One of the first projects I remember doing 10 odd years ago was I used to apply for all these funding applications, was one of the arts projects, and the girls then put in the masjid we have a painting on the wall that the girls did at that stage when we so we ran craft projects early on, and there is a lot of artwork within the masjid that's brought in there, and film showings are done regularly and discussions thereafter, so that people can interact and be able to speak to the director or the producer and whatever the issues were related to that. So that's all. It's another way of socializing and mixing. People want diverse ways of socializing and mixing it, so that people are not just coming and praying and going. There's lots of other things going on. But the thing that I did that developed within that was my own kind of particular thing that I did was the tajweed, because one of the things, I know that there's madrasas everywhere, but it's an important, that particular project that I have kind of particularly spearheaded was the madrasa one. And for me, one of the important things and where it came from was actually the fact that I needed to teach my own children and I wasn't going to send them anywhere. Because of obviously things things that have happened, the children face within madrasas, not only overt abuse and childcare issues and safeguarding issues, but just the way of teaching and intimidating that I experienced as a child, and the poor learning experience. And I really needed to bring a more positive teaching experience to the children. And it landed up being sort of small groups teaching my own kids, and it just expanded organically. And we've actually then been able to train the teachers and establish the classes. Then as it grew, Allah gave me 12 classrooms, mashallah, alhamdulillah, to do that. So the important thing there was the safety of our children first and foremost, and to make them feel happy and positive. What they learn they're going to learn, but how they feel is really, really important.
It's a connection with the mosque at the end of the day. That defines how much they love the mosque, doesn't it?
So I had a little video clip I think I sent you just for background information. One of the girls had said, oh, we come here and we do learning and we have lots of fun activities. Now, if that's the only thing that girl's left with from the masjid for her life, takes it forward, you know what, I'll be really happy, because, it gives her a positive that she's taken away. And all of these activities, whether it be the cafe, the cult, the cinema, the recreational martial arts, karate, etc., if, as you say, Khadija, builds a connection with the masjid, that people take away a positive experience, which was, a move on from what maybe we experienced a few decades ago as children ourselves. And we need to develop, keep on working on that. And that work is not going to happen just by me or Khadija. It's going to happen by people coming in. That's another important point. I know I'm probably reiterating it, but you mentioned, your focus, Sarah, is about women. But, we have a Jummah space for 40 women. And we're in the West End of Glasgow, and we have about half a dozen women attending. And the khutbah is, I'm not biased, but it is excellent, mashallah, because I've not heard it from myself, right, but from others. And it's been in English right from the beginning at the outset. And it's a very spiritual experience. And it's a really nice, pleasant way to, have that. And I don't think the women are availing themselves of that opportunity. And I think it's okay for us as women to say such a body is not providing us with facilities, but when they are facilities, when they're not availed, it is, then to be honest, those facilities are going to go away. I wanted actually to expand our facility in our masjid. I was thinking, you know what, if we had this space filled, I'll knock that classroom down because we'll make more space. It's never come to that. And this is why I think this is a really crucial message. If you want the masjid to give you, your families, your children, you're connected, if you want that experience, and you know what, it's really important. It's really important, that connection. You need to be in there and you need to be present. You might not do nothing else at the beginning except be present. Like I said to you, when people were present, they got involved. And one particular example I give of a woman who actually was a mum who came with her children, and she attended my tajweed classes, and she was one of those committed people, and that's very difficult to find as well. And she was there for 3 years learning, and eventually I said to her, I said, you know what, would you like to just help with the classes, help the little kids while your kids are in the classes? And 3 years later, she actually became a fully fledged teacher. And she turns around to me and says, you know what? And I could see when she started, she didn't have she was like, am I here teaching these? But then she grew into the role and got confidence. And afterwards she said to me, she said that, look, I am so grateful for that opportunity, because I would have been at home depressed if I had not done this and come and mixed with people and done something worthwhile that's built my confidence in myself and brought me out of the house. And, I would have been at home in pain, in depressed and feeling awful. And there's a few examples actually of that situation. So it's not about, you need to be present, you need to go, you need to become part of that community and grow, make it grow. The onus is on everyone.
Yeah. Everything you've said, Kish, honestly, I think it's just superb. That's exactly the message that we want to put out there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. The time just flown by, but I do want to ask one last question, and I want you to all answer it, but try and keep it short. Now, we've been talking about vibrant centres, vibrant mosques, really dynamic places. But how would you advise, what do you say to those mosques and those places that are resistant to change, that don't want to change the way they are doing things? Any kind of piece of advice for them? Imam Mansour, from yourself first, and then we'll get around to Sheikh Khadija and Dr. Kish.
I would tell them that they're not fulfilling the purpose of the masjid. The institution of the mosque, when it was initially made by the Prophet ﷺ, included men, women, and children. There was space for men. There was space for children to run about and play in the masjid. There's a place for women to come and pray. So they're really, for masjids that are very male-dominated and like to do things a certain way, is going against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, is ostracizing the women, and they're missing out because they don't know how many women there are within the community that can influence positive change within the masjid, and what kind of skill set these women have to move the masjid forward in terms of community work and other activities that they can do, rather than the prayer and just educational classes. So I would tell them that, go back to the roots that the Prophet ﷺ laid, and that was that the masjid is a community hub. Is open for all members of the community, and everybody should have unrestricted access to using the masjid, inshallah.
Inshallah. Khadija?
I feel pretty much the same way as Imam Mansour, so I definitely second that. But also as well, I would really one of the things that I would really want to speak out to maybe the other masjids is, who are we doing this for? We have to remember this. What is our intention behind this? As well as, we're serving the community. We're working for the sake of Allah. So, resisting change is not going to benefit our community. Our community is changing. So we need to change in our approach. The best way that we do our dawah, the best way that we bring people towards Allah and fulfill their needs the way we were supposed to, is we get to know the people and we establish our intentions. Like, who are we doing this for? Why are we here? It's not about us. That's the thing. Like, for us, whether you're imam or a female scholar, committee member, you're on the board of trustees, you're on the management, none of this is about us. It's all about Allah and people coming to Allah. And those people have a right over us, and we have to fulfill them for that right. And if we don't fulfill that right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us, what we done with that. And that's something, if we're running masjids, we're teaching, we're doing these things, that we need to remember that it's not about us, and change has to happen, and change has to come forth. And when we change, our communities become attached to us. So I think that's just a piece of advice that I would like to give.
I completely second everything they say, but if I was to add anything succinct, to add value to that, I hope would be to say there has to be flexibility. I can think of two particular quick examples of funeral services that the people didn't get their wishes. One was the mother had asked her son to do the funeral prayer. On another occasion, it was a convert sister who wanted a funeral in a particular way, but the mosque would not accommodate this, not because it was not feasible to do so, because they're used to doing things in a certain way and there was a lack of flexibility. You know, when these things happen, these are events that happen once and, you know, are important events. And I think there has to be flexibility and shifts and exceptions to what's deemed to be the usual way. So there has to be flexibility and shifts in what you do. They are responsive to what somebody may have requested you to do, and see if it's feasible.
Thank you all for that. This has been such a wonderful, enlightening and refreshing conversation. And I wish we could take what we've heard from Imam Mansour and Sheikh Khadija and Dr. Kish and spread the word to other mosques, other community members, and to ourselves, the community. The change has to come from us. Really, I appreciate everyone's time today. And I hope you enjoyed this, and if you liked what you've been listening to, please support us. Please go and donate to our crowdfunding appeal. We need donations to continue the work that we're doing to improve our facilities. If you want to see more of our webinars, they are on our YouTube channel. Join us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter on our website. Thank you very much, Jazakallah, for your time and joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Thank you to my guests. They've been amazing, really great insights, and have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.